I recently shared this story for the first time in a True Scary Stories group on Facebook. I got a lot of feedback from people who lived in the same town I did when this event happened. It felt good to finally share my experience. Shortly after posting, a woman contacted me and physically threatened me and my family if I wrote about him again. She believes him innocent, etc. It spooked me. I took my story down. I don't need weirdos like her in my life. I've since done some thinking about this and want to post my story again somewhere anonymously. It's my experience. So here it is. I originally thought this incident happened in January of 1984. I now realize it was probably later in 1983. I was 8 years old and lived in Aurora, Colorado, a suburb southeast of Denver, Colorado. We lived in a brand new subdivision and I loved it. Our house was busy. I had 3 older sisters, an older brother, a grandmother, and my mom living in our home at the time. My 10-year-old sister and I shared a bedroom on the main floor. Our house was a ranch style. I loved this room. My twin bed was pushed up against the wall that had a window that faced into our backyard. I liked to push the curtains aside at night and perch my elbows on the windowsill and look outside. The window was elevated, but not so high that I couldn't see into the yard easily. My older sisters shared the room next to us, and my grandmother was in a large room across a small hallway from us. My mother had a finished bedroom all the way downstairs in the basement. My brother had the rest of the basement. He was 16 years old at the time and had a lot of friends that were always coming and going. I remember our house always being full of guests. We had a really cold spell hit us that week. It was super icy out, and my sister and I had been playing in the backyard. Our backyard had not been enclosed with a fence. We had these circular snow sleds that we would stand on and glide across the slick parts of the grass. We weren't good at putting our outdoor toys away and had left them strewn across the lawn. That night, something woke me out of a sound sleep. I thought about getting up and going downstairs to sleep with my mother. I did this from time to time, as she and I were really close. Then I heard a noise outside my window. It sounded like someone was slowly walking across the snow in the backyard. I could hear the frozen grass crunching under their feet. Then I heard someone say shit, or another explicit word, and something clink. I perked up out of my bed and moved my curtain aside and looked out the window. I think I originally thought I would see my brother or one of his friends out there. He often came in late at night past curfew and usually snuck through the backyard into an open basement window. I remember thinking that he shouldn't be doing this on a school night, and I was going to tell my mother in the morning that he woke me up. It wasn't my brother. I saw a young man probably in his early 20s that I didn't recognize. I made eye contact with him and then quickly scanned the rest of the yard for my brother. I didn't see him anywhere. I was going to move away from the window, but the man's eyes were glued on mine and he started walking towards my gaze. I froze. I couldn't move. He came as close as he could to the glass. He smiled at me. It was an eerie smile. It was an, "Oh look, you caught me doing something I shouldn't be doing," kind of smile. I remember he had crystal blue eyes, almost gray. Something about his expression was not right. It took me a few seconds to realize I was feeling fear. He was not a friend of my brother's, nor supposed to be in our yard at that time of night. I panicked and jumped off my bed and quickly ran downstairs to tell my mother. Once I got to the basement, I saw that my brother was sound asleep in his bed as well. This scared me more, as I know for sure now that this man in our yard was most likely not a friend of my brother's. My mom calmed me down, came upstairs, and turned the light on outside and looked into the yard from the sliding glass door windows. She didn't see anyone. I remember her not making a big deal out of it, and I ended up sleeping in the basement bedroom with her the rest of the night. I didn't sleep well. I wondered why that man was in our yard and where he went. I remember feeling scared that he might come back. I don't know the exact timeline, but I'm guessing it was a few weeks later that a family a few streets over from us were murdered in the middle of the night by an intruder with a hammer and a knife. The father, mother, and 7-year-old daughter were killed, and a 3-year-old daughter was left for dead but miraculously survived. This crime sent our entire community over the edge. The police did not seem to know who had done this horrible thing or why. All we know is that the hammer killer probably chose their house at random, came in through an open garage door. No one in my family mentioned to me the man I saw in our yard again. I asked my mother about it years later and she tensed up. The hammer killer case went cold and the community moved on as people do. I moved further south to a different side of Denver. I never forget that man in my yard though, and I always feel he might have been the same man who murdered that family. As years went by, more information came out, and they linked the murder of the family to a vicious murder and rape of a woman in another community, Lakewood, as well. They also linked him to a savage attack on a couple and a flight attendant in Aurora, as well as through DNA. He was a serial predator, and he was active in our community that whole time. Fast forward to 2019, and I'm watching the news. I can't believe it. They've solved the cold case of that family's murder from 1984, as well as the other attacks. They flash the picture of the suspect across the screen, and my heart stops. It's him. It's that man I saw as a child. I have that face saved in my memory because he spooked me so badly. I said something about it to my brother, and he shrugged about it. I mentioned it to some friends, and they said it was creepy, but there was no way I could have remembered something like that. I thought they might be right until the evening news also showed some photos of the suspect when he was younger and likely committed the murders. That is exactly the man that I saw. I know it. It's changed the way I think about things. It's changed the gratitude that I feel for my life. What if he hadn't tripped on our sleds in the yard and somehow made his way into our house? My sisters and I could have been the ones on the news.